Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are standing at the edge of something, well, something massive.
We really are. It's arguably the fulcrum of human history.
Exactly. We're talking about the crucifixion.
Yeah.
But we aren't just talking about a historical event here. We are talking about a transaction.
Right. It is the moment where everything changes. It's this singularity of the Christian faith and really of the whole human story.
Yeah, that's the perfect way to phrase it. But before we even take one step forward into the analysis, we have a bit of housekeeping to do.
Essential housekeeping today.
Yes, very essential. Usually we tell you that you can listen to these deep dives while you're driving or doing the dishes or walking the dog. And you still can.
Yeah.
But to really get what we are about to unpack, we need you to do something first.
Right. We actually need you to hit pause.
Seriously.
Seriously, hit pause, open your Bible or your app, and read the Gospel of John, chapter 19. Read the whole thing.
It's not incredibly long, but it is, man, it is dense.
Very dense.
And because we're going to be pulling apart specific symbols, Greek words, and these really deep Old Testament connections that John has woven into the narrative, you really need that storyline fresh in your mind.
If you haven't read it recently, this analysis might feel a bit abstract. But if you have read it, this is going to light up like a Christmas tree for you.
It really will. The nuance John puts into this text is staggering. So, assuming you've done that, welcome back.
Glad you're still with us.
Today's deep dive is titled John 19, the Debt Collector Disarmed.
Now, that sounds a bit like a legal thriller.
Well, in many ways, it is a legal thriller. It's a cosmic legal drama.
Most people, I think, when they think of the crucifixion, they just think of the physical event, the suffering, the nails, the cross.
And we are going to talk about that. The physical reality is absolutely crucial.
Right. But our sources today emphasize that John, the author here, isn't just giving us a police report of an execution. He's showing us a legal transaction.
That's the key word right there. Transaction. A transaction where a debt collector, and we're going to find out exactly who that is totally disarmed. We're going to look at the trial, the torture, the specific symbols like the thorns and the hyssop branch, and we're going to drill down deep into one specific word.
Katelestai.
It is finished.
Exactly.
And we're going to ask what exactly was finished and how does a death on a Roman cross 2,000 years ago actually affect your personal freedom from spiritual debt today?
It's the question of the ages, really.
So let's unpack this. Part one, the context.
Oh.
We need to know who is telling us this story. We're in the Gospel of John. So who was John?
John is a fascinating figure. He identifies himself in the text as the disciple whom Jesus loved.
Which I have to be honest, always sounded a little bit like a humble brag to me.
Yeah.
Like, oh, look at me, I'm the favorite.
Right, yeah. It's easy to read it that way through a modern lens, but scholars actually see it as the exact opposite. Notice he never names himself.
Yes.
He's the son of Zebedee, a Palestinian Jew, a former fisherman. He was part of the inner circle with Peter and James. He saw the Transfiguration. He was there in the Garden of Gethsemane.
Yeah, he had the resume.
He had a massive resume. But when he writes this gospel, he completely submerges his identity into his relationship with Jesus. He's essentially saying, my name doesn't matter. My history doesn't matter. What defines me is just that he loved me.
That sets a very different tone. It's an identity based on reception, not achievement.
Precisely. And we have to look at when he's writing this. It's likely towards the late 1st century. The context is grim for his readers. He's writing to Jewish and Gentile Christians, probably in Asia Minor, who are facing a severe crisis.
What kind of crisis?
They are being expelled from the synagogues. They are being socially ostracized, which back then meant they were losing their families, their economic standing, their entire heritage.
So this isn't written to people living comfortable lives in the suburbs. This is written to people who are paying a heavy, heavy price for their faith.
Exactly. And on top of the external persecution, they have this internal theological threat called Gnosticism rising up, which basically question whether Jesus was actually real.
Like whether he had a physical body.
Right.
Give us the explain like I'm 5 version of Gnosticism.
Well, Gnosticism was this philosophy that claimed the physical world was inherently evil. Matter is bad, and only the spiritual world is good. So they argued that if Jesus was God, he couldn't have had a real physical body, because God wouldn't touch dirty matter.
Ah, I see.
They said he must have been a phantom or a spirit that just looked human.
So John is fighting a war on 2 fronts here. He's trying to encourage persecuted Christians, and he's trying to prove that Jesus was flesh and blood.
Right. That's exactly why John is so obsessed with physical details in this chapter. The blood, the water, the thirst. He's saying, I was there. I saw it. This wasn't a hologram. This was a man, and he bled.
He actually says it explicitly in chapter 20, doesn't he?
He does. He says, these are written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name.
He's bolstering their faith with hard eyewitness evidence. Now, before we hit chapter 19, we have to quickly look at the road that got us here, chapters 17 and 18. Because John frames the arrest of Jesus very differently than the other Gospels, doesn't he?
He really does. In chapter 17, you have the high priestly prayer. Jesus redefines eternal life not as a destination, but as a relationship. He calls it knowing God. And he frames his coming death not as a tragic defeat, but as his glorification.
Which is just a mind-bending way to look at an impending execution.
Yeah.
I am about to be glorified.
Right. It completely flips the script. And then in chapter 18, when the soldiers come to arrest him in the garden, John includes a detail the other writers leave out. When Jesus asks who they are looking for and they say Jesus of Nazareth, he simply says, I am he.
And what happens?
The soldiers fall to the ground.
They just fall down.
They literally fall backward. It's a display of raw sovereign power. In the Greek, he says, ego, eimi, I am. It's the divine name from the burning bush in Exodus.
Wow.
John wants us to know that Jesus didn't get caught. He surrendered. He wasn't a victim of circumstance. He was the master of the situation. He handed himself over.
That is crucial context for chapter 19, because when we see him beaten and bleeding in a minute, we have to remember he could have flattened them at any moment.
Precisely. He is choosing this. He isn't losing. He is submitting to a plan.
Okay, let's move into part 2, the trial and the torture. This is John 19, verses 1 through 16. Pilate takes Jesus and has him flogged. Now, we hear flogged or scourged, and we might just think, okay, a bad whipping. But the historical sources paint a much uglier picture.
It is horrific. The Greek term used is mastigo. The Roman flagellum wasn't just a leather whip. It was a handle with multiple leather thongs, and woven into those thongs were jagged pieces of sheep bone or balls of lead.
So it's not just impact we're talking about. It's destruction.
It was designed to shred. The intent was to tear the back open, exposing muscle, tendons, sometimes even internal organs. It was historically known as the half-death, because many prisoners died just from the scourging before they ever got to the cross.
But why would Pilate do this? If he hasn't sentenced him to death yet, which he hasn't at this point in the text, why the torture?
That's Pilate's twisted political strategy. He's trying to use this as a lesser punishment.
A lesser punishment? That's insane.
To the Roman mind, it made sense. He thinks if he beats Jesus within an inch of his life and drags him out in front of the mob, a bloody, unrecognizable messes, their bloodlust will be satisfied. He thinks they'll look at him and say, okay, that's enough, let him go.
He's literally trying to save Jesus by torturing him.
It's a gruesome compromise. But then the soldiers take it a step further. They engage in this mockery. They put a purple robe on him, mock royalty. And they twist together a crown of thorns.
Okay, let's unpack the thorns, because this is where the theology gets really rich. Physically, these aren't just little rose bushes we're talking about.
No, the local bushes in that region, like the Ziziphus spinocristi, have long, needle-sharp spikes. Some are up to an inch or two long, hard as wood. Jamming that onto a human skull is excruciating. The scalp is incredibly vascular. It would have bled profusely.
But John is doing more than describing pain here. Our sources indicate he's pointing us backward in the timeline, way back.
He's taking us all the way to Genesis chapter 3.
The fall.
Right? After Adam and Eve sin, God pronounces a curse. But notice what he curses. He says, cursed is the ground because of you. It will produce thorns and thistles for you.
Thorns are the symbol of the curse.
They are the physical manifestation of what is wrong with the world. The earth, which was supposed to yield fruit, now yields pain. Thorns represent the ruin of creation caused by human rebellion.
So when Jesus wears the crown of thorns,
he is literally wearing the curse. He is the second Adam, as Paul calls him in his letters. The first Adam brought the curse. The second Adam wears it. He takes the symbol of human rebellion and divine judgment, and he wears it on his brow so that he can redeem humanity from it.
That is profound. The Roman soldiers think they're just making fun of a peasant king, but they're actually crowning the one who is bearing the sin of the world.
It's the deep irony of John's gospel. The soldiers mock him as king, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews," and they don't realize that they are proclaiming the absolute truth. He is the king, and this suffering is exactly how he reigns.
And then Pilate brings him out, beaten, bleeding. wearing this mockery of a crown, and he says to the crowd, "Behold the man, ecce homo."
Pilate is hoping for pity. Look at him, he's a wreck. Surely this is enough. But John sees something else. When Pilate says, "Behold the man," it's almost like God is speaking through him, presenting Jesus as the ideal man, the perfect representative of humanity.
But the crowd doesn't pity him. They just scream, "Crucify him!" And then the charge shifts. It stops being about politics and gets highly religious.
Yes, they shout, "He made himself the Son of God."
And the text says Pilate was afraid.
He was terrified. You have to remember, Pilate is a Roman. He's superstitious. The idea of gods appearing in human form and getting really angry if you mistreat them was very real to a Roman. So suddenly he's looking at Jesus and thinking, wait, who is this? Have I been whipping a god?
So he goes back to Jesus and asks, "Where are you from?" He's looking for an origin story. And Jesus gives him this incredible answer about authority.
Jesus says, you would have no authority over me at all unless it had been given you from above.
For talk about flipping the script again.
Yeah.
Here is a prisoner, bound and bleeding, telling the governor of the entire region, "You're only in charge because my father let you be in charge."
It's a statement of absolute sovereignty. God is using even the injustice of Pilate to accomplish his plan. But then comes the real tragedy. Pilate tries to release him, and the chief priests play their final card. They scream, "We have no king but Caesar."
That is just heavy.
It is a total apostasy. For a Jewish leader whose entire national identity is built on God being their king, to say, "We have no king but Caesar," is to reject their entire history. They are rejecting God as their king. They are rejecting their messianic hope entirely. In their hatred of Jesus, they basically sell out their own soul.
And Pilate caves. He hands him over. Which brings us to part 3, the crucifixion. John 19, verses 17 through 24. They take him to Golgotha.
The place of the skull.
Why that name? Is it just because it looked like a skull?
Physically, yes. It was likely a rocky knoll outside the city that resembled a skull. It was the city dump, essentially,
Right.
the place of execution. It was outside the city walls. But our sources point out a really fascinating geographical connection here. Many scholars believe Golgotha is located on the exact same ridge system as Mount Moriah.
Mount Moriah. That's Genesis 22, right?
Exactly. That's where Abraham took Isaac. God told Abraham to sacrifice his son, his only son, whom he loved. They go up the mountain. Isaac is actually carrying the wood for the sacrifice on his back.
Just like Jesus carried the cross.
Yes. And Isaac asks, "Where is the lamb?"
And Abraham says, "God himself will provide the lamb."
And thousands of years later, on that same ridge system,
God provides the lamb.
it's the fulfillment of the picture. And there's another layer to the skull imagery. Go back to Genesis 3 again, the first prophecy in the Bible. God tells the serpent that the seed of the woman will crush his head.
And where does the crushing happen? At the place of the skull.
The place that represents death and the head of rebellion is where the victory is actually won. It's poetic, but it's brutally poetic. And the book of Hebrews, chapter 13, adds another layer. It notes that Jesus suffered outside the camp.
What does that mean for us?
It means that if we want to follow him, we have to go outside the camp too. We have to go outside the systems of worldly approval and religious status. We have to be willing to be ostracized just like he was.
Now, they nail him to the cross, and Pilate puts up a sign. Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews.
And he writes it in 3 languages, Hebrew, Latin, and Greek.
Why 3? Is he just being thorough, or is there a message there?
It essentially covers the whole known world. Hebrew is the language of religion, of the local covenant people. Latin is the language of law and government Rome. Greek is the language of culture, philosophy, and commerce.
It's a universal broadcast.
It is. It's declaring that his kingship isn't just for the Jews. It's over religion. It's over government. It's over culture. It's universal. And when the priests complain and say, change it to, he said he is king, Pilate refuses. He says, what I have written, I have written. Again, he's an unwitting prophet. He proclaims the truth despite himself.
Now, while he's hanging there, the soldiers are down below dividing up his clothes, which fulfills Psalm 22. But there is this really specific detail about his tunic. It was seamless, woven in one piece from top to bottom. Why does John include that? Is it just fashion trivia?
John doesn't do trivia. Everything is a sign. The seamless garment is a direct reference to the high priest's clothing in Exodus 28. The law stated that the high priest's robe had to be woven in one piece so that it would not tear.
Why was it so important that it didn't tear?
Because the high priest represented the wholeness of the people before God. If the robe tore, the priesthood was considered invalid. So here you have Jesus on the cross. He is the sacrifice, the lamb, but the seamless robe tells us he is also the high priest offering the sacrifice.
Even in his nakedness, John sees theological significance.
Exactly. He is mediating between God and man, even as he dies.
That brings us to part 4, the death and the victory. This is really the heart of the matter. Verses 25 through 30, Jesus looks down and sees his mother, Mary, and John standing there.
And he creates a new family. He says, "Woman, behold your son. Son, behold your mother."
He's dying in absolute agony, and he's making sure his mom is taken care of.
It shows his deep compassion, of course, but it also shows that the spiritual family, the covenant community, takes precedence over biological ties. The church is literally formed right there at the foot of the cross. He is entrusting the care of the vulnerable to the beloved disciple.
And then we get the moment. Verse 30. He receives the sour wine from the hyssop branch, and he says one word. In English, it's 3 words. It is finished. But in Greek, telestai. This is a word we really need to understand deeply. Our sources break this down into 3 distinct meanings from the ancient world. Let's walk through them because this really changes how we view the cross.
The first meaning is financial. Archaeologists have found ancient tax receipts and promissory notes written on papyrus. When a debt was paid off or a tax bill was settled, the scribe would write tetelestai across it.
Paid in full.
Paid in full. So when Jesus shouts this, and notice, he shouts it, he doesn't whisper it. He is declaring that a transaction is complete, a debt has been cleared.
Let's pause on the debt for a second because I think modern listeners hear sin debt and they think, okay, I told a lie once or I got angry in traffic. It feels manageable. But the sources describe this debt as something much, much heavier.
It's immensely heavier. It's a debt of justice, honor, and love.
Break that down for us.
Well, justice is relatively simple to understand. We've broken the law. We are transgressors. But honor is deeper. We have robbed God of the glory due to him. We've lived for ourselves, used his creation for our own ends, and completely ignored the Creator. That's a massive theft of honor.
And the debt of love.
The greatest commandment is to love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Have you done that perfectly for every single second of your entire life?
Definitely not. I haven't even done that for the last hour.
Right. Then you are in debt. You owe a lifetime of perfect love that you haven't paid. The problem is we are completely bankrupt. We can't pay an infinite debt to an infinite God. We simply don't have the currency.
So when Jesus says tetelestai,
he is saying, I have paid it, the debt of justice. Paid by my suffering, the debt of honor. Paid by my perfect obedience, the debt of love. Paid by my sacrifice. The ledger is zeroed out.
that is the financial meaning. What about the others?
The second is sacrificial. When a priest examined a lamb for the temple sacrifice, he had to ensure it was without blemish. If it was perfect, he would say, Tetelestai, it is complete, it is ready. Jesus is announcing that the perfect sacrifice has been offered.
And the third meaning?
Vocational. A servant who finished a difficult task given by his master would report back and say, Tetelestai, I have done what you sent me to do. Jesus has finished the mission the Father gave him.
So it's a shout of victory.
Absolute victory. It's not a moan of defeat. It's not, oh no, they killed me. It is mission accomplished.
And this connects directly to the title of our deep dive today. The Debt Collector Disarmed. Who is the debt collector here?
Well, in a spiritual sense, the prosecutor is Satan. The Bible refers to him as the accuser of the brethren.
And how does he accuse us?
He uses the law. He uses our debt. He points to the ledger and says, look, God, they are guilty. You are a just judge. You have to judge them. They belong to me because they broke your laws.
He has a legitimate legal claim.
Exactly. He has the certificate of debt, as Paul calls it in Colossians chapter 2. But when Jesus pays that debt,
The prosecutor has no evidence.
he's totally disarmed. If the debt is paid, there is no accusation left. Colossians says Jesus nailed it to the cross. He took the evidence that was against us, nailed it to the wood, and canceled it. So Satan is stripped of his legal power. He can't demand your judgment anymore because the judgment has already happened.
That is the legal victory. But there's also a psychological victory here, isn't there? The fear of death.
This is huge. Hebrews chapter 2 talks about this explicitly. It says, Satan enslaves people through the fear of death. Think about it. If you are terrified of death, you will do anything to preserve your life. You'll be selfish, you'll be cowardly, you'll be anxious. You won't take risks for others because you're desperately protecting yourself.
But if death is conquered,
If the captain of our salvation has gone into death and come out the other side, then death is just a doorway. It's not the end. The ultimate weapon is broken. We don't have to be afraid anymore. And if you aren't afraid of death, you can't be manipulated. You are free.
that is just powerful stuff. So Jesus dies, he gives up his spirit, and again, John emphasizes that it's voluntary. He bowed his head and gave up his spirit.
He was in control to the very last second. He dismissed his spirit.
Now we move to the aftermath. Part 5. John 19, verses 31 to 42. The Jewish leaders want the bodies down because the Sabbath is coming. It's a special preparation day. So they ask Pilate to break the victim's legs.
This practice is called Crucifixion. It's essentially a brutal mercy. Crucifixion kills you by suffocation. To breathe, you have to push up on your nailed feet to relieve the pressure on your diaphragm. It's agonizing. If your legs are broken with a heavy mallet, you can't push up anymore. You suffocate in minutes.
So they break the legs of the guys on the left and right. But they come to Jesus.
And he's already dead, so they don't break his legs. And John points out this fulfills Scripture, Exodus 12. The Passover lamb must not have a broken bone. If they had broken his legs, he wouldn't have been the perfect fulfillment of the Passover type.
But to make absolutely sure he's dead, a soldier takes a spear and jams it into his side.
And out flows blood and water.
What's the significance of that? I know there are a couple of angles here.
Right. Medically, it suggests a ruptured heart. The pericardium, the sac around the heart, fills with fluid under extreme stress. When pierced, the blood and the watery serum separate. It suggests he literally died as a broken heart. The physical stress and agony of bearing the sin of the world actually ruptured his heart.
And the theological implication.
Blood represents atonement, the price paid. Water represents cleansing, the washing away of sin, and the giving of the Holy Spirit. Zechariah chapters 12 and 13 talk about a fountain opened for cleansing and looking on him whom they pierced. John sees this blood and water and says, this is it. This is the prophecy happening right in front of us.
That ties into the whole idea that John 19 witnesses to the end times, doesn't it?
It does. It's what theologians call an end times microcosm. The inscription on the cross foreshadows the day every knee will bow to the King. The pierced side fulfilling Zechariah points to a future national repentance. The kingdom is inaugurated right here at the cross, even though the full consummation is still future.
It's the already but not yet.
Exactly.
And then finally we get to the burial, and two really interesting characters step out of the shadows.
Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus.
Nicodemus, we know him. He showed up earlier in John chapter 3.
The guy who came to Jesus at night because he was terrified of his peers, the ultimate secret disciple. But look at him now. He comes in broad daylight, and he brings 100 pounds of spices, a mixture of myrrh and aloes.
100 pounds? That sounds like a ridiculous amount.
It's an immense amount. It's a royal amount. That is a burial fit for a literal king. It's an act of extravagant worship. But more importantly, it's an act of incredible bravery. By taking down and burying Jesus, they're identifying themselves with a man condemned by Rome as a traitor and by their own Sanhedrin as a blasphemer. They are risking their careers, their wealth, maybe even their lives.
So the death of Jesus didn't scatter them. It emboldened them.
It completely transformed them. The cross pulled them out of the shadows. They looked at the price he paid, and they decided their own safety just wasn't worth keeping anymore.
And they lay him in a garden tomb.
Which is a beautiful theological bookend. The human tragedy began in a Garden Eden. And now the restoration rests in a garden, waiting for the new creation to begin on Sunday morning. Where the first Adam fell, the second Adam rests.
This brings us to part 6, conclusion and application. We've unpacked the history, the Greek words, the symbols, the theology. But what does this mean for you, the listener? What are the core spiritual principles here?
I think the first one is substitutionary atonement. We really have to get this into our bones. Think of Barabbas earlier in the narrative. Barabbas, the actual insurrectionist, and the murderer was set free, and Jesus took his cross. We are Barabbas. The innocent took the place of the guilty.
It's not fair.
Grace isn't fair. If it was fair, we'd be on the cross.
And the sovereignty aspect.
Yes. To the disciples, that Friday looked like absolute, unmitigated chaos. It looked like evil had won a total victory. But looking back, we see that every single detail, the gambling for clothes, the vinegar, the legs not being broken, was written down hundreds of years before. God was in complete control of the worst day in human history.
Which is a massive comfort when we look at our own lives and things feel completely out of control.
Absolutely. If God can use the injustice of Pilate and the cruelty of the cross for ultimate good, he can use your situation. There is no chaos that he cannot redeem.
Now, we touched on this briefly, but does John 19 foreshadow the church in the end times?
It does. The new family formed at the foot of the cross with Mary and John as the prototype of the church. And the burial implies the coming resurrection, the first fruits. which guarantees the future harvest of all believers at the end of the age.
So, practically speaking, how does the listener live this out tomorrow morning?
First, live from victory. If the debt is paid in full, stop trying to pay it. Stop trying to earn God's love with your moral performance. It's finished. You cannot add to it. You live from approval, not for approval.
That is huge. It changes your whole motivation. You obey because you are already loved, not to get loved.
Exactly. Second, public identification. Be like Nicodemus. Step out of the shadows. If you have resources, influence, wealth, use them to honor Jesus. Don't be a secret agent Christian. The cross demands a public response.
And finally, stewardship. Extravagant love.
Nicodemus brought 100 pounds of spices. It was totally over the top. But when you realize what the king did for you, no amount is too much. Radical generosity becomes the only logical response to radical grace.
It's a beautiful picture. We started today by saying this was a deep dive, and I feel like we've really touched the foundation.
We've touched the bedrock of the faith.
The place of the skull became the place of absolute victory. The debt collector is completely disarmed. The receipt is stamped, paid in full.
And that is the most liberating news in the entire world.
So here's our final encouragement to you. Walk in that freedom. You don't have to fear death. You don't have to fear accusation. The work is done. Tetelestai.
Tetelestai. It is finished.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive today. Again, if you didn't pause earlier, please go read John 19 now. It will mean so much more to you after this conversation.
Absolutely. Read it with fresh eyes.
We'll see you next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe to support the show.